Welcome to the Jay Martin Show. My name is Jay Martin, and my guest today is Dylan Grice, the co-founder of Calderwood Capital. And today, I got Dylan's thoughts on some tectonic shifts occurring in the financial markets. We talked about AI and the doomy headlines and forecasts that we're seeing. And we also touched on the future of crypto in relation to Operation Checkpoint. Here's Dylan Grice. As always, right beneath this piece of content, there's a link where you can subscribe to my weekly newsletter. I publish every Sunday. I love writing it, and I'd love to have you join the team. Hit that link if you want to hear from me every Sunday. Here is Dylan Grice. Enjoy.
This is Jay Martin.
All right, here I am with Dylan Grice. Finally, Dylan, it's great to have you on the show. Thanks so much for making the time.
Thanks for having me, Jay. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm looking forward to chatting with you. So here's where I want to start. Every new guest, I just like to get a window into how you spend your day. So for my audience who maybe hasn't heard you before, Dylan, who are you and how do you spend your time?
Well, I co-founded Calderwood Capital a couple of years ago with my partner Rob Cranian, and another partner later who joined us, a guy called Tim Bergen. And we set up originally as a hedge fund to try and kind of solve a problem that we were experiencing ourselves. And that was that we didn't really feel comfortable with the kind of most of the investment products that were out there. In fact, pretty much all of them. We felt that the investment products that were out there were pretty much based on the assumption that, you know, what worked over the last 40 years was going to work over the next 40 years. Yeah. There wasn't really a kind of wealth preservation vehicle out there. So I'd been in a family office before this. I'd been working in one of the largest family offices in the world, actually. I'd been running their liquids portfolio. So we'd been very focused on kind of capital preservation and doing a good job for the family and kind of preserving the capital, the family's kind of wealth and supporting their philanthropy. And the problem that we kind of wrestled with every day was that, you know, at this point in time, this was a few years ago, and interest rates were down to zero. And we just kind of felt that, you know, there was this kind of time bomb that everyone was sitting on, that if interest rates were to go up, and we got a kind of glimpse of this last year, but if they were really to meaningfully go into a kind of bear market, then the whole kind of edifice would come crumbling down. And where could you hide in that kind of environment? And we kind of felt that nobody was really answering that question, that everyone was really hiding away from it and really just crossing their fingers and hoping that that wasn't going to happen on their watch. And that wasn't good enough for us. And so eventually we thought, well, yeah, rather than kind of banging heads against the wall, why don't we just do this ourselves? Because we did have some ideas on how to do that and how to answer that question. And so that's really what Calderwood was born out of.
You sent out some tweets recently discussing like the fear-mongering around AI, and you had some interesting context. You're like, weren't we all supposed to be driving autonomous cars by now? And, you know, these things take time, essentially, is how I read this, right? But if you read mainstream headlines today, there's a ton of doom and gloom near-term forecasts coming out. And I have a lot of friends who are suddenly really worried about how fast the world might change for the worse. They always tend to go down the dystopian rabbit holes. What's your take on the emergence of ChatGPT and the rapid compounding of AI that we're seeing right now?
Well, I mean, I kind of have mixed feelings about it, really. To be honest, I have mixed feelings about it because I do feel that, you know, when people in an industry who are really deep in that industry and they're really deep in that knowledge and understanding, when they're kind of hopping up and down and waving their arms around and saying, look, we're actually kind of worried about this. I think you should be worried. You should be paying attention. So, you know, that is interesting. That's useful information to me, right? What I kind of, so I'm very interested in listening to those debates, right? And it's kind of what's interesting is that people who have, there seem to be just as many people who are deeply into AI and spend their careers researching AI and machine learning. You know, top computer scientists on the planet who've been doing this for 40 or 50 years. There's as many of them who are absolutely relaxed and unconcerned, right?
Yeah.
As there are who are really, really concerned and really, right? So I think that it's important to kind of put that in you know, to understand that context. And then you've also got the kind of, I suppose, the kind of, you know, the kind of Twitter crowd and this, you know, the kind of social guys who were like experts in COVID, and then they became experts in Ukraine, and now they're experts in AGI. And I suppose the reason I tweeted that was because I just kind of felt it was almost as if like the aliens had just landed. And, you know, I think that's not right. I really think that's not right. There's some really, you know, I mean, two things. Firstly, a lot of the AI seems to be hackable, very hackable. So the reason driverless cars haven't materialized is because they're actually not reliable enough. They're absolutely fine until suddenly they see a sign that says, you know, stop, and for some reason they read, you know, 60 kilometers an hour or something, so they just fly through it.
Yeah.
And you can really, you can, I think a famous example, if you put a picture of a sheep in front of an AI, you can put 10,000 sheep in front of it and it will see that it's a sheep. You actually scramble some of the pixels in one of the images, and in a way that to the human eye it's imperceptible. It's still a sheep. The AI will see like a tractor, right? And so and so you can generate algorithms to hack AI, to actually disrupt AI, so the AI is not seeing what you think it's going to see. And I think someone recently did that with Go, with AlphaGo. If you remember AlphaGo, which, you know, AI is now far better at Go than humans,
Yes.
right? And I think it's actually, since, I mean, this is years ago now, but it's off the scale. It's like, I think it's literally like hundreds of thousands of times better than the very best Go players. But a group of researchers figured out how to hack it, and a human beat AI 14-1, beat the very top AI program 14-1, basically, because we figured out how to hack it. So these AI systems are not actually as robust as we think, and that's why they are only being deployed in very narrow contexts, right? So it was really, so I just think it's kind of important to kind of understand that aspect to it. You know, I don't think they are quite upon us. I don't think aliens have landed. We haven't quite figured out narrow AI, let alone AGI. And then, of course, you take a step back and we have a history of seeing doom around the corner. We have a history of this deep-seated fear of technology, right? So, you know, I mean, I think the Bible kind of actually starts off with Adam and Eve getting kicked out of the Garden of Eden, right? Because they weren't actually playing by the rules, and their punishment is to kind of live in a wasteland, you know, this kind of environmentally degraded place that because they've been kicked out of heaven. I think you have stories of Noah and Noah's Ark and fear of floods. I think in Greek mythology you have Icarus. You know, this kind of technology goes too far and you grow wings and you can fly, but you fly too close to the sun and you meet your doom. You know, you had this Luddite revolution in the UK in the early 1800s, where guys it was during the Industrial Revolution when machines were taking the jobs of textile workers. The textile workers actually started smashing up machines across the north of England because the machines were taking their jobs. They were terrified of where it was going. You know, essentially Jurassic Park was a story of technology going mad, right? And so this kind of idea that technology, we're going too far. We're innovating too much. We will inevitably become victim to this arrogance. It just seems to me to be a human story that's as old as we are. And so, is this any different? Are we not just doing the same thing? I don't know. I'm kind of, as I said, I'm skeptical of this idea that this superhuman and machine intelligence has just landed, really.
I publish a weekly newsletter every Sunday. If you would like to subscribe, hit the link right beneath this video. Now, I'm an investor, but I don't write about managing money. I write about managing my mind. Without question, the hardest and most important part of allocating capital through volatility and getting some back. If you want to read my newsletter, hit the link right beneath this video. I know you'll love it. Now back to the interview. Enjoy. And we've been conditioned very recently to be responsive to fear. and doomy headlines. I mean, this has driven our social behavior for the last 3 years, right? Just various pockets of fear emerging, whether it's a pandemic or civil unrest or now some kind of hot war and the potential consequences of that. But it's like, you're right. It's every year thus far in the decade has been a new absolute threat.
Yeah, I think so, but I also think there's a kind of cycle. There is a kind of cycle of trust. We oscillate between trusting each other and not trusting each other, and I think as a collective, a society, and we're kind of going from one to the other. Well, we have been for some time. So you've got this real fragmentation around, and I think a part of that fragmentation is a fear. It's a fear of the other, right? So it's a fear of another tribe. Basically, it's kind of tribalism. I mean, to bring it back to where we started, I mean, that's actually, I don't really do forecasts, and you said, well, in 2030, what do you think we do? What we'd be looking back on? And I said inflation. Inflation is a part of that. Inflation is a part of that distrust. I think this morning the news was that Europe is now going to pump money into funding its own semiconductor research. Which kind of makes a lot of sense, right? Because you're not sure what China's going to do to Taiwan, and you want to secure your own supply, and the Chinese are trying to secure their own supply, and the Americans are backing Intel. So all of a sudden, we're all making our own chips, which is kind of fine. But the kind of logic of capitalism, the logic of the free market, the logic of kind of free exchange is that you let people who are the best at doing stuff do it, right? You don't impose a boundary, you don't impose a border necessarily so that you have to do everything. If you're doing everything, then you're not trading anymore. You're not trading with the outside world. And so what you find is that you're not as, you can't produce as much, as cheaply. And if you can't produce as much as cheaply, then costs go up. And if costs go up, inflation goes up, right? So I think that the two things, I think that it is all kind of interlinked, really. I think this kind of, this growth in fear, this apparent tribalism, as I said, this kind of inflationary future that I think we're moving into, I think is actually all part of the same thing.
And do you think the response from certain figureheads in the tech community and in government to immediately impose some kind of regulation or regulatory planning around AI development and training is an effective approach? Or do you think that is redundant? I mean, the way that I see it is like you got regulators just trying to keep up with entrepreneurs, and good luck. But what's your take on that, Dylan?
I mean, I don't know. I think I'm quite kind of nihilistic about these kind of things.
Okay.
I just don't. I think that one of the things that's been very interesting to me is that a lot of this debate in the AI community seems to be about, you hear things like, we as a society have got to make a decision on whether we want X or whether we want Y. And we as a society have got to come to terms with, something. And I guess I listen to that and think, well, when did we ever do that? Good point. Honestly, when have we ever done that? This kind of illusion of control, right? Yeah. You really think that that someone is just going to put their hands up and just hit the stop button? It does, I mean, I don't know. Has that ever happened before? I don't think it does, right? And you might try, but someone somewhere will figure out a way around it. And anyway, the Chinese will do it, or the Russians will, someone will go out and do it. Yeah. Or they'll find a hack, or and so the genie's kind of has been out of the bottle for I don't know, probably since we got thrown out the Garden of Eden. Right. To refer back to us, but I think, as I said, I'm kind of nihilistic about it. I just don't feel that we really do have much control. I don't think anyone does, really. I think the whole thing is completely out of control. We're kind of strapped onto the front of the train, really, and we're along for the ride, whether we like it or not. That's my kind of view. So I think that it totally makes sense that regulators will try and because that's what regulators do. Sure. Right, but having regulators regulate finance didn't stop SVB from going down. It didn't stop 2008. When we were head of the Fed was a guy who was steeped in in the study of the Great Depression. He was going around telling everyone, there wasn't going to be a housing market crash because they didn't happen in America. And, so what, okay, fine. So you try and regulate it. What good's that going to do? So yeah, I said I'm kind of pessimistic on that. What do you think?
Well, I that resonates with me, when you use the analogy of being strapped to a train and we're just along for the ride, and I don't think that's me being passive. I think it's me being pragmatic, that the world's going to operate and go a certain direction. I don't think it's passive of me to say I don't have the ability to change that direction or manipulate it to any great extent. It's my job to play the game, right? The game is laid out in front of me. It's my job to play that game. I can't change the rules. And if I want the rules to change, like, nobody cares what I think anyways. So let's just get really good at the game as I can understand it. And yeah, I mean, that's, so which is an interesting segue. Have you been watching the developments and the announcement of the Unicoin, which is, forecasted to be a monetary unit that will transform the world economy? This is the IMF's potential new vehicle for monetary exchange. Have you been watching these announcements of the Unicoin, Dylan? And do you have any thoughts on that?
I've very, very, I mean, from a distance,
Okay.
I've been watching it because I've been kind of following crypto for some time and been kind of involved in it one way or another for some time. And I think one of the things that was becoming clear last year, but it's becoming crystal clear right now, is that they're killing it. They're killing crypto. And I think this kind of Operation Chokepoint thing that's currently underway, where they're basically trying to debank anyone who's kind of associated with crypto. That's happening, right? And I think you'd have to be an idiot not to realize the implications. So I think they're trying to kill it. I was a very big believer in the idea that kind of decentralized currency, crypto, could solve a lot of problems, and it really, really could have worked. But I think that they're kind of killing it. But they are killing it, and so it's not going to fulfill anything like its potential, in my opinion. So what you're going to get, what you've got an IMF digital currency, and I mean, you've got central bank digital currencies. What's the point? I don't really see the point. It's just, okay, you're giving the existing fiat system an upgrade, a technological upgrade, but it's still a fiat system. I think it's just a fundamentally flawed system, and I think that the fiat system is probably responsible for a huge number of the world's ills today. But it's not going to change. I think that we experimented with free banking, which is a kind of decentralized money, which is a kind of forerunner to, by hundreds of years, a forerunner to kind of crypto, and it was shut down. It was shut down for political reasons, because obviously, I don't think there's more power really that a state has than the control of its currency, control of the currency. So the idea that any kind of state really is going to relinquish that power is kind of nonsensical. So it didn't happen with the free banking, which were gradually shut down and centralized. It's not happened with crypto either. So I kind of look at some of these, proposals that they've got a bit of crypto lipstick on them, but I struggle to kind of get too excited about them, to be honest.
Okay, and when you say Operation Chokepoint is going to kill it, can you expand on that? Like, do you think that's the end of Bitcoin, or?
I don't think it's the end. I don't think it's the end, actually, because I don't think you can just switch off Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Right. If someone's using it somewhere, or someone's finding it useful somewhere to transact or something, it's going to exist. And there's not much you can do about it.
Yeah.
But you can make life very, very difficult for it. You can make life very, very difficult for users. Right. So it's, I think from the very beginning, it's been very difficult for legitimate, legal, tax-paying crypto companies to get bank accounts. Right. And that's getting worse now. Right, so there's certainly been an attempt to kind of stifle innovation for some time, but what you're seeing now, and I think that the best example was when SVB went down, and in fact, it wasn't SVB. I forgot the name of it now. It was rescued. The FDCI, the other one was a signature. The FDCI stipulated that the crypto business was not a part of the deal, right? They want a buyer. They open up the books, but the condition of the sale is that you have to shut down the crypto business. Why? Why did you have to shut down the crypto? It wasn't the crypto business going to? Why was that, right? The answer is because it's kind of politically undesirable. Which, by the way, from a political point of view, if I was the president of the White House and I was, kind of sitting in that seat, I think it's very obvious crypto is a direct threat to the power that you wield. So it kind of, there's a certain kind of logic to it. But yeah, I think that's what's happening. And so I feel that centralization won. This kind of decentralized dream is kind of over. That's kind of how I feel about it.
Yeah, I appreciate that perspective. Okay. Look, Dylan, I want to thank you for coming on and chatting with me today. I appreciate your time. Thanks so much for chatting with me and getting in front of my audience. No
problem. Pleasure.
And where can I send people if they want to hear more from you and more about what you're working on?
So I guess I'm on Twitter. The best place to go is either you can hit me up there, or it's on the web, calderwoodcapital.com. Okay, awesome. Yeah, and it's just at Dylan Grice on Twitter for anyone looking for a follow. All right, appreciate it, Dylan. Thanks so much. All right, thanks, Jay. Cheers. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Now, if you want to take the next step, I publish a weekly newsletter and it's free. There's a link to subscribe right beneath this video, and you can join me and 50,000 other investors weekly for this exclusive content where I share my key action items and takeaways from conversations just like this and plenty others. Thanks for stopping by.